In the past, I've done a lot of videos about the overdrive / distortion pedals that we have in the Helix and HX Stomp and even the Pod Go. There's some really impressive models in there, but all of the videos I've done have always been using them in combination with the built-in amp modeling that we have in those previously mentioned devices. One thing that I haven't done is taken a look at using the overdrive and distortion pedals in more of how they would be used in, let's say, a 4-cable method for folks who are actually utilizing their Helix with a real life tube amp guitar rig. And I thought it would be kind of cool to give a few tonal demonstrations of how these overdrive distortion pedals, not all of them, but the ones that I really liked in the Helix, and to use those with, as I mentioned, a real tube amp. So I do have this set up so that we're not hearing any modeling as far as guitar amp modeling goes from the Helix, but only using the overdrive distortion models. And they're going into my trusty Rev Generator 100R tube amp head, which I'm then using the built-in torpedo remote just to go into an impulse response for ease of recording for this video. So all we're hearing is pure amp tone into an impulse response from my RAV 212 impulse response library that I have available at the Line 6 Marketplace. And I'll show you this setup a little bit more when we head over to the computer, but that is basically going to be it. And we'll take a few of the Helix overdrives. We'll hear how they sound with a real guitar amp, completely avoiding the actual guitar amp modeling of the Helix. So let's do this. Let's head over to the computer and I'll show you first of all the setup, and then we'll take a listen to how some of these sound. So first things first, I'm here in the 2Notes torpedo remote software. In their IR loader section, you'll notice that I have the JS RAV 212 Fathead and SM7B combination. As I mentioned, this is from my RAV 212 impulse response package that's available on the Line 6 Marketplace, and I'll have a link to that below if you do like what you hear with these. I also have the JS RAV 212 Fathead loaded up. That's just the Fathead Cascade Fathead mic loaded up, but I'm only using IRA. As you can see, IRB is muted. The only other processing I have on this is just a little bit of reverb from the basement setting in the ambience mode here with a dry wet ratio of about 26%. So that's basically it. Coming over to the Helix, I've set up 7 snapshots with some of my favorite overdrive pedals. You'll see the names of them here: Klon, Prince of Tone, Tube Screamer, Tube Driver, Legacy Drive, ZenDrive. I think most folks will know what models these are. This is obviously the Klon Centaur, the Analog Man Prince of Tone, and Ibanez Tube Screamer, Chandler Tube Driver, the Carvin Legacy Drive, and then the Hermida ZenDrive, which is kind of more of a dumble-ish style overdrive. And these are some of my favorites. And I have the Nun snapshot, which has these all turned off. But first of all, I want to show you what setup I have here. So over here on the input, I have the input impedance set to auto, as I don't think there's any special impedance settings needed to get the most out of these particular models, but I thought just to be safe, I would put this on auto, and I have the Helix set to set the auto impedance to the first enabled block. So whichever one I have enabled, that's where the impedance is going to be set to the optimal setting for. And you'll notice I have these set so that if I go to, let's say, the Klon, all other overdrives are not in use except for the Minotaur. If I go to snapshot 2, same thing now. You'll see that all of these are bypass, and now I'm on the heir apparent, and so on and so forth as we go down the line. You'll notice that I have the output block of this path set to send 1, 2. So out of the send number 1 on my Helix floor, I am plugging that directly into the front of the Rev Generator 100R amp, as we would do in a 4-cable method, right? I mean, obviously a 4-cable method would be more complex than this because we'd have some post preamp effects as well to integrate with our guitar rig, but we don't need to do that here. This is just more simulating just what the overdrive would be doing, hitting the front of the amp. And another important setting I have in global settings on the Helix is that my send 1 is set to instrument level output, as the front of the amp would want an instrument level going into it. So that's basically it. Now, if we come back over here to our torpedo remote software, you'll notice I have everything else bypassed. So this is the settings here. I have everything else bypassed here. I'm on the Nun snapshot, so there's no overdrive. This is what the sound of the Rev amp is without any of the overdrive pedals. So a nice little tone. Again, that was using that impulse response from my RAV 212 package. I really like that. Kind of a nice fat tone to it. So we can now come along and pick one of our snapshots here and see what that tone turns into when we apply the Minotaur to it. So this is the Klon model that we have in the Helix, a very sought after overdrive. I've never had the pleasure of playing a real one in real life, never owned one, so I can't really comment on how close it is to the original, but I really like the tones we can dial in. I notice I have the gain set up really high here, toned at 4.2, but that's what this sound gives us. So a real wide range of tones out of this model. With it off. You'll notice that the bypass tone I have, it's clean-ish, but I always like just a little bit of hair on my clean sounds. I can always dial the guitar volume back a bit if I want to clean up more, or just even pick softer. I like it to be clean, but when I kick it a little harder with my picking hand, then it kind of gets that edge of breakup. So when I bring the Klon back in, we could use to push it a little harder. And something to keep in mind is the level controls on all of these can be of use because we can hit the front of that amp harder. Just by boosting that level control up. Now, it may not be the sound we want. We can use the level control in combination with the gain control. Of course, we have a tone control. We can darken this up. Or brighten it way up as well. Again, the tone without it. So a lot of different tones inside of there, and we can really use that tone control to really adjust to where we want it to be. I usually tend to like it a little bit on the lower side. So that is the Klon model. Moving on to the Prince of Tone. This is a really interesting model because we have not only gain, we have tone and presence, but we have different clipping modes. We can use it as a boost, as a distortion, overdrive. We have different gain mods to normal or higher gain. We can even control the modeled voltage of this. So this, at this heavy-handed setting of 10, with these settings here on the overdrive, sounds like this. Again with it off. Then we can also set that to a distortion mode. Or just a boost mode. Of Quite a difference in the volume there. We'd have to adjust for that if we were dialing this in. I really do like the overdrive setting here though. Again, with it off. We can go to the higher gain mod. And again, a lot of great tone shaping tools. Presence. You know, obviously I'm driving those to extremes right now. Tone control. Very flexible. We can really darken this up nice. So very, very flexible tones. Moving on to our trusty old Ibanez Tube Screamer. What's nice about this is the simplicity, right? We have a tone control and a gain control. Again, bypassed. And again, that's a pretty extreme tone setting. I like that you can get some really nice, creamy overdrive out of this. I really like some of those ones, even when it's pushed really hard on the gain level all the way up. Keep in mind, these can also be used to drive a more of an overdrive sound of an amp. So that, you know, I have this set and bypass to be fairly clean to edge of breakup. Anybody who's wondering, I am on the second channel of the Rev 100R, the green channel, with the gain set fairly low and all the tone stack just basically at 12 o'clock. So that was our Tube Screamer model. On to a real favorite of mine, the Chandler Tube Drive. This has always been a really interesting pedal. It's kind of neat because we have a lot of control with the different bass and treble. It's not just a single tone control. Can really make it nice and creamy sounding. Getting more of an Eric Johnson-y vibe out of it. That gets really thuddy like that, but add some delay to that and a bigger reverb, and you probably have some beautiful, beautiful tones capable of some nice sustain or some lower setting. So again, a wide array of tones available there. And the beautiful thing, we could also, you know, use snapshots if we wanted to enable different settings on these. Moving on to the old Steve Vai Legacy Drive. More of an amp in the box style pedal. We got drive, bass, middle, treble, presence, so lots of ability to dial in some really cool tones here. Lots of gain on tap. So some beautiful stuff that we get to bite a lot more with our tone stack built into it. You know, so you can really dial that in to whatever you need. You can make it a lot darker sound. Really, I mean, that's probably too extreme. A lot of the settings I will use in this video are kind of extreme, but lots of flexibility there as well. Moving on to one of my favorites, the Diana drive, or the ZenDrive. Again, with it bypassed. The voice control on this is really kind of neat. More gain and more bite when it's set up on the higher settings, and lower gain and smoother tone when set lower. Tone control is also very flexible. That's a really nice tone. A fair amount of gain on tap, I guess. If you need more sustain. As we move that voice up. You can really use the voice and tone in conjunction with each other at extreme settings and get some really nice tones out of it. All right, so there's some sound examples. This was really not about my opinion about whether these overdrives are any good. I wanted to let you hear them, some of my favorites. Obviously, we have other models in the Helix, but I wanted to let you hear some of my favorites at some different extreme settings and play around with the controls a bit to let you hear what they sound like, but not going into the amp modeling of the Helix, rather into a real tube guitar head in the way that a lot of folks who utilize the Helix as more of a 4-cable method effects processor just to get their effects out of while getting all of their actual tone, guitar tone from a tube head. We really shouldn't overlook the Helix Overdrives and Distortions because they are a great tool, and we've got a lot of great tones in there that we could incorporate into our real guitar rigs in this 4-cable method, or just hitting the front of the amp as I did today. I hope that was enjoyable. Just a fun little look at some of the possibilities with these great overdrive models we have in the Helix. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get some use or enjoyment out of watching it. Also, please subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for sharing your time with me. Ciao for now.